just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other. Coach Nick, great to be with you here today. I would love to focus our conversation today on solving the biggest 3 problems that business leaders face today. And I figured where might a good place to start would be defining that. What are the 3 biggest problems that business leaders face today?
I love dialing in, get the focus. I mean, this is where we spend a lot of our time in terms of actually cranking out the value of the people that we work with, right? So primarily working with business leaders. So what are the top 3 things? Top 3 things that business leaders face today. I mean, context of today could be, this time of year, which we're recording it just the beginning of 2023. Or you could think of it just in the cycle of where we are after the pandemic and everything else. But ultimately, the stuff, why we're so certain about it, is that it never really goes away. The flavor changes a little bit. But what's the number one thing? The number one thing, or the first of those top 3, is absolutely people getting stuck in doing the same old thing. So number 1 is doing the same old thing. I'm just going to call it that for today, doing the same old thing. And what's the classic? I've always done it that way. That's how we've done it. Now, you might be thinking as a business leader, that's an obvious thing. Same old thing. I wouldn't do that. I haven't been in business for 20 years, so I'm not going to get caught in that. Or, I'm of a generation where I understand that. But I want you to think about it from a granular perspective. What are the things that you have been doing consistently that you haven't been aware of in your business that have been holding you back? What might be an example of that, Coach? And give me an example from perhaps this week or the last week or two from one of your clients that have been doing the same things. They haven't really been aware of the thing that they're doing that's holding them back.
Let me think about that. I think of a CPA that I'm coaching who there's seasonalities to it. So whenever his busy season rolls around, it's the same old. I'm just going to be busy. I know that I'm going to be busy. And that's not untrue, right? But to your point, there's a different way to think about that busyness that might behoove him to get to a higher level in his practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the same old thing. Under that, it's hiding if I'm being, no, I'm going to be busy. But if you pull that back and coach them through that, you'll find the things that they're actually doing, which is creating the same old thing. In that case, it's leading them to be busy. Okay, so that's the same old thing. Number 2, so number 1 is same old thing. Number 2, it really is around creating a view of exponential and not iterative. So the second thing is thinking iterative rather than exponential. Now you might be thinking, right, being iterative and moving forward, that's great. Right, that's great. And yeah, look, that's progress. But the people that we work with, and I think the people that listen here, aren't interested in being okay, being fine. Right, we're past that. This is the next level stuff. This is about the simple secrets of the successful and going to that next level. So number 1, same old thing. Number 2 is thinking iterative, not exponential. Now, part of this is a human condition. We tend to think in a linear fashion. This follows that, this follows that. Like if 1 to 10, that 1 to 3 is taking 3 hours, you expect that 4 to 6 takes 3 hours as well. Not the case. That's how compound interest comes in. So by thinking exponential, it allows us to ask questions like, okay, I want to grow 10, 20% this year. Instead of asking that type of question, which is, again, fine, but what if you ask a question of, how might I grow 100% this year? So getting stuck in that iterative thinking prevents us from really understanding what is possible for our particular business. What jumps out for you, Coach? What example might you have?
I think about that concept that sometimes it's hard to see from our perspective how we'll get there, but that's almost the definition of exponential, right? That something happens along the way that catapults or accelerates that at such a faster rate than we can imagine, And I think to what you're saying is just the fact that how we might think about that is actually the limiter in the results that we might be able to achieve. So just going back to that starting place of what's possible and believing that what's possible goes beyond the way that I can think about what might be possible. Does that make sense? Like I recognize the limitations and what I think might be possible in congruence with what I might be able to achieve.
Yeah, right. So like you set out what you think is available because that's anything you can think that you can achieve, rather than if you ask something that's completely outside of what the realm of what you might instantly think as possible, your mind goes, "There's no point because I don't have to get there." But if you do ask that question, you have to go to a different place to answer it.
Yes, and to take that a step further, just by thinking beyond what I think might be possible, creates the opportunity for those bridges or bridges of belief to show up along the way.
You got it, absolutely. And this is, I mean, those are practical examples, right? So the same old thing is like thinking I'm busy versus actually pulling back. What are you doing to create that for yourself? Like, how you complicit in the things you say you don't want. And number two, thinking iteratively rather than exponentially. You're capping the downside. You're creating a box, and that doesn't often give you the juice. Like you might say 10-20% sounds fine, but if you probably get a whole lot more excited about it if you said, how do we get to 100%? And so it's great to think about. And number three, so it's number one is same old thing. Number two is iterative versus exponential. And number three is leading versus management. Leading versus management. And even with the high level people that we work with, I see it all the time. In a place where they're trying to get things done through pushing processes onto people rather than leading people through. Why do you think that we go to that as a default coach? Why is it go to the management of a person rather than the leadership of a person? What do you think is the mechanism for that, if you would?
Sure, I think for a couple of reasons. I think one, we might not know another way, and two, we tend to think of people as a homogenous group that might all be the same. And this is my technique, this is my strategy, this is the way that's going to be, follow it or else. And I'm in a position of authority, so I can make that call, and you have to follow the rules or else you'll be out of here.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the old command and control style that comes from like a military focus. Now, Stephen Covey Jr. just wrote a new book on the opposite of that. The antidote is trust and inspire, not command and control. And absolutely, the default is that. And we built like a whole industry around rewarding people for their time or paying people for their time more specifically. So I think that's the classic. It's set up to support that you do what I tell you, I'm in charge. And even people that are being the ones that are told that, they accept that's the case, even though they don't like it necessarily. So, okay, what's the difference here, right? Well, one of the challenges that leading is hard. It's longer. I mean, not hard. It's longer. We tend to think about if I want to get, I haven't got time. Like I want to get it done. So we take what's effective in the process and we bring it to the people. But you can't manage a person. You can only lead a person. That's really, really important to think about what is holding us back in our businesses because we want to get stuff done. But in order to really think long term, that's why I want to do it. Long term plans with long term people is thinking about leadership, not management, and understand that it takes time to get to that place. A great example of this that we work with our clients on frequently is thinking about how are you incentivizing, or more importantly, engaging your employees to think like owners to create outcomes that they want. And that really is the holy grail of this, right? Because when you can create someone that works for you in your organization and make them into an owner and think like an owner without actually making them an owner on paper per se, although you could do that as well, you create an environment where they set up the game so they can win, where everyone wins together. And that is really the highest level of leadership. We can talk about the different levels of leadership perhaps another time, but that transcendence where you're leading and you're not even there. What will Coach Josh do when you're not there is cool. So if you can set it up in a way where people aren't getting paid for their time and getting paid for their results, that's the great way to practically show that you're working in a place where you're leading and not managing.
Coach, let me ask you a question for somebody who might be listening to this and has this mentality or has heard this before or embraces this mentality. Well, you don't understand. I'm the business owner. Nobody's going to care as much as I care. What would you say to
Yeah,
that?
I agree. I completely agree. And you don't want someone that cares as much as you care because there's already one of those people. Like that's you as the business owner. But you do want to know people that want to be there and why they want to be there. Right? They have to have a reason for being there and see a future for being there. Because look, ultimately, if you know that something that you're doing is not something that's long term and sustainable, and it's not giving you value in the moment, as soon as that decision is made, any time past that is dead time. 2 days down a road you don't want to go down, then is a cost of 4 days because you got to walk back 2 days to get back to the start point, and then 2 days in the other direction. So any time that you are going down a place like working in an organization, doing a role, having a business that you know that you don't like and you know is not going to get any better, if you really do honest with yourself, that's a double whammy of cost. Scary.
Yeah, speaking of iterative versus exponential, that's the exponential version of loss right there, right? I'm going the wrong
You
way.
go, and that's why all these things can be tied together. So I've got number one is doing the same old thing. Number two is you got to think exponential, not iterative. And the third is you've got to think leadership, not management. Create that
Mm.
leverage.
If I'm listening to this and my ears perk up the most about number three, I understand this and I want to do something to practice this to embody what a leader might do, and I realize that I might be my own self limiter. What might I practice? How can I practice being a better leader? What is it? What is that? Something tangible that I can actually do to improve my leadership skills?
Yeah. Number one is just go all the way back to the start. It's like, where am I going towards here? Now, in life, we get to choose what our goals are and our outcomes and our endpoint, relatively speaking, whatever that might be, as far as you're thinking out. And that should drive a lot of your decision making because you know where you want to go. Or it should, and also should drive or the ease of which you can avoid distraction because you know they're not getting you to your outcome. So that's true for individuals. But in the construct of a business, as the owner, you're in charge of your end goal, like that North Star, if you will, but you're also in charge of the entity North Star. And someone in your organization is going to be looking for that North Star, whether they know it or not, to really be engaged with where you're going in your business. And if you don't define it for yourself in the business and for those others, then they can't follow. That's number one for leadership in your business. If you
A
don't know where you're going and define it, then they can't go follow it.
quick interjection, just to notice, like the part of your answer had nothing to do with people or nothing to do with how to lead somebody. It's going back to the beginning to identify that North Star.
Yeah. Because it's back to leading yourself. So we're back to the levels of leadership, right? First one is be able to lead yourself. So if you don't know specifically where you're going, I mean that's always going to be the case, right? If something's confusing, don't know what to do, you got to break it down and get back to the clarity. Why are we here in the first place? Where are we going? What are we doing with this? So if you can come back and go, hang on, okay, what is most important in our business? What is our biggest outcome? What's our vision, our mission? And you can use some of those semantics, but essentially is what's the thing that I want to share with people that we're going to go after? And that'll be the number one question when you work with people in your teams. You can ask them, hey, this is where we're going. And it might be crazy to think that that's where we're going, but we're going there. It's happening. And it's going to be a journey for sure. And there's going to be some challenges along the way. But is this exciting to you? Is this something that you can get on board with? This could be a great place for you. I want you here, but I only want you here if you want to be here. Let's talk about it. Let's get into it. I had a client actually share with me last week about this concept of really getting it and this ownership. He's all in on it. It's taken him a couple of years to get there, but he's there. So he had a conversation with his team and said, "Like, I want you to all be owners. I want you to all step up. I want you to all define this." He said, "If you can't or don't, it's okay. You can still work here, but you're not part of this bigger leadership picture. And I need to find someone else that can do that type of role. It's okay." I think that's important as well.
Coach, this is awesome stuff today. Good to make a list and think about the top three things that challenge people today, business leaders. I'm wondering if we might end off with some sort of leverage point with, how can I make the most progress the quickest with one or two or all three of these things at the same time? Is there some way that you think about leverage for addressing these and getting our arms around and embodying the very best of resolving all three of these challenges here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the overlay here is you got to think about where you are in your business right now. What are the areas that are most important for you to push, and where are your biggest pain points? And then you can start to see where all these things will show up because they're interconnected as well. But which one's the one that's going to make the biggest impact in your business right now? And without going into detail, we don't know, of course, right? Like part of what we do, coach, is that we know the principles and concepts that show up all the time, but we don't know the specifics for each business. So that'll be the work to do in your business right now, is to go, okay, do a little audit. Where am I? What's most important and where we're going? And what are my biggest pain points right now? What hurts the most? And think about what's going to give you your biggest lift, your biggest bang for your buck, or your biggest relief. Might be a better way to think about it as well.
And I like thinking about it like that because we might not even think about it like that. It's the power of intention and power of question, of asking the right questions. What would make the biggest impact in my business? And just use it under the umbrella of these three questions. Coach, we'll play a clap emoji on the way out. Or sound effect. I don't know what we call it these days. There we go. Thank you for being here today, and we'll see you on next week's episode of Truth Seekers.
Boom.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction, so please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.